Welcome to Business Talk Sister Gawk. Today's podcast episode is how to start a music licensing business. And with me today, I have a special guest named Maddi Frick, and I'm super excited to have her. Thank you so much for being with me today.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, okay. So I have so many questions for you about this topic, but first, could you tell me a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, I am a music licensing consultant, and I also own a business that represents musicians and pitches their songs for placement in productions like film, television, advertising, and video games.
Wow, that's like quite a variety of different platforms as well.
Yeah, and I mean, they all come with their, pros and cons, depending on what industry you're placing a song in. But it's good to be well versed in all of them, and so you can better serve your musicians.
Yeah, so why did you start doing this?
So it was a, dream of mine when I was a teenager. I had a bit of an epiphany when I turned 15 where I I just realized it was someone's job to pick the songs that were in the movies that I loved. And I
Mm,
knew in that moment that that was something that I wanted to do. You're
okay.
sitting in a yeah, you're sitting in a movie theater and you hear a really good song, and if it's perfect, it gave me goosebumps, and I just wanted to chase that feeling. So I, was in my mid 20s and I didn't like what I was doing. So I just said, screw it. I'm going to chase this dream because now I'm at the point where if I don't do it, I'm always going to wonder what would have happened if I
Mm-hmm.
had tried. So I saved up some money, moved to Los Angeles, and made it happen.
Oh, okay. So you're gonna have to dig into the how you made that happen. What did that look like to get started?
I, did a lot of research, figured out what I needed to do. There was a bit of, I had a little bit of a crisis in that I am from northern Minnesota. I was living, in the Twin Cities, and the thought of moving to Los Angeles was not enjoyable to me. It was frankly terrifying. Um, and so I had a bit of like, well, maybe I could go to Nashville or Austin, Texas, which seemed more approachable. But I went to South by Southwest one year and ran into someone who lived in Texas from the music industry. And she just gave me a bit of wisdom where she's like, if I was your age, mid 20s, I had my whole life in front of me, I would go big or go home. And going big is fully moving to Los Angeles. So I took that advice to heart. I saved up some money. I think it was only like $5,000, $6,000 I had saved up. And I picked a date and moved to Los Angeles. The things I had lined up in Los Angeles before I got there was I had reached out to my favorite music supervisor, who I had actually reached out to during my college career just to ask him some questions. So I
Mm-hmm.
was already like, my name was vaguely recognizable to him by that point. And so he had agreed to let me intern for him. And then I also had a class lined up at UCLA. It was like a night class in music supervision. And I picked the day to move there, which was the day that the annual music supervision conference was being held. So my first day in Los Angeles was showing up to that conference, meeting tons of people in the industry, and just networking. And then within a few months, I landed my first job at Universal Pictures.
Wow. Okay. So I am like super excited about all these things, but first of all, you need to clarify what is South by Southwest?
South by Southwest is a music, arts, and cultural festival in Austin, Texas. It's actually happening, mid-March every year, which is
Okay.
right now.
Yeah.
Um, and so it's lots of up and coming bands, although they do
Mm.
have some big name bands, but the bulk of the music festival is all these bands take over Austin, Texas, and they're playing in bars, whatever stages people have, and people from all over the country, all over the world fly in to see music and attend panels.
Mm. And what a I just love Austin. It's such a walkable city, so I feel like that would be a really good place to have that.
Yeah, I've only been to Austin during South by Southwest Music Festival, so I know the city's very different during South by, but I've loved going every single time.
Yeah. Okay. So tell me a little bit more about what sort of degree or educational background did you have in order to start this sort of business? You had mentioned that you were in college. What was that for? What were you learning? And how was that helpful?
Yeah, I only have my bachelor's degree. I went to St. Olaf in Northfield, Minnesota, but I don't have a music degree. I don't have a music business degree. I made my own major, which sounds kind of hippie, but my major
Okay.
is in cultural and media studies.
Mm.
So vaguely related, but not really. But I participated in the college radio station, became co-manager by the time I was a senior. I interned at a national public radio affiliate. So I took every music opportunity I could, even if it wasn't in music licensing specifically. And I
Yeah.
think that's totally okay. Like, as long as you're getting some kind of experience, you can keep tangentially like relating that to what you want to do, even if you're in a region where what you specifically want to do is not available.
No, that's really good advice, honestly. And I think that people sometimes can get really tunnel visioned on this is what I want and nothing else, that they don't realize how applicable all these other experiences can be very helpful once they want to step into that.
Yeah.
So yeah. So tell me a little bit about how do you go about choosing the artists you represent, and did you do this originally with another company and then go off on your own, or how did that transition happen?
Yeah, so at the beginning of my music licensing career, I was working for other companies. I interned, I worked at Universal Pictures, I worked at Stars, and then I just I got to the point where I checked all the boxes I wanted of things I wanted to do in Los Angeles, and I had to leave. I couldn't be there any longer. I had to come back to the Midwest. But there's also a bit of mourning in that because I thought I would have to abandon the career that I had built for myself. But it turns
Mm-hmm.
out that enough people and companies in this industry need help that I've been able to be self-employed since that time. So I was initially, contracting, freelancing, self-employed for other companies, helping them pitch their artists to productions. While also like I still do production work. I wrapped up some TV shows this winter where I worked directly on the TV show. But it was, moving back to Minnesota where I felt like I am definitely ready to start doing this on my own. And there's also so many good musicians and talent in
Mm-hmm.
Minnesota and the Midwest specifically that aren't being represented in
Oh,
Hollywood. And I feel
absolutely.
like I can be a great advocate for them. And also, it's been actually pretty easy to sign artists because people in Hollywood really aren't paying that much attention to Minnesota bands. So I can like scoop them all up and represent them
Got a
myself.
little corner on the market over here,
Yeah,
huh?
but so in terms of picking an artist, first you think of genre and whether you think you can, find placements for them. It's much easier to place pop music than it is country
Mm,
music. So that
okay.
kind of comes down to it. And then there's also accessibility to them in terms of if they are a larger name, if they are signed to a record label or a publishing deal, they probably can't sign their rights for sync licensing to someone to me because the record label is already representing them. Um, so it is, I'm right now focusing more on up and coming artists. I'm essentially placing bets on musicians who I think are going to do well, and I see a lot of potential in their music. And just simple things is like looking at what's charting locally, what's on public radio, what are people talking about on the local blogs, looking at concert calendars, and checking them against play counts. But really, a good song is a good song, and that's always going to stand out. So it's always
Hmm.
about listening to the music and figuring out what speaks to you and what you think could work for placement.
Yeah. Yeah. So is there like we kind of talked about this a little bit, but have you found there's a benefit then to living in one location versus another when you first start out? Do you think you could have been as successful as you are today if you would have stayed in Minnesota and networked from a distance, or what do you think about that?
I think it's definitely possible to have stayed in Minnesota and make this work. I don't think it would have been possible for me personally. I don't think I would have had the confidence to start my own company doing this, having never lived in Los Angeles. And a lot of
Mm-hmm.
that comes down to the education. Like, I'm definitely someone where, like, my issues in terms of like starting a business or starting something new is I do too much education up front. Like, I spend a little bit too much time preparing before I actually do the thing. And I just know for me, if I hadn't gone to Los Angeles and learned how to do it, I would never have done it here in Minnesota. But it's
Mm-hmm.
not impossible for other people, I would say.
Yeah, so I think maybe personality is a part of it, and then also knowing that you have the confidence to do something, maybe working with some people can actually give you the confidence to say, yeah, I do actually know what I'm doing. You
Yeah,
know?
exactly. Yeah,
Ye-
definitely.
Yeah, so how do film companies know how to get in touch with you? Is it about like a network that you have to be a part of? What does that look like to kind of look for business?
Yeah, in terms of representing the musicians that I've signed, if they reach out to the musician, they should direct them to me. Alternatively, if you look at my website, I've got a list of the bands I represent. And so, once they start reaching out for contact, it's usually pretty easy to find me. In terms of like music clearance and licensing, where I work directly on productions, it is networking. I get most of my jobs like that are through referrals where a production reached out to someone and maybe their plate is overloaded and they're like, well, I know Maddie also does this. She's great. Reach out to her. And then it's
Mm,
also networking regionally in terms of, there are more and more productions being filmed here in the state, and it's knowing who to reach out to on
hmm.
those productions proactively, so that they know that I'm here and I can work directly on their show if need be.
Okay. Yeah. So how do you, as now you're a business owner, how do you structure your time and decide what is best to work on?
Yeah, I'm definitely a morning person in terms of being able to get things done. And it did take me a long time to realize that I do my best work in the morning. I put the things that are most valuable, creatively valuable to me in the morning. And then afternoon is more reserved for tedious work, I guess. That's the interesting thing about music clearance and licensing is that there is a lot of creativity to it, but there is also a lot of spreadsheets and data and
Mm,
rights holders and paperwork that you have to do. So it is like a balance of those two things.
yeah, no, absolutely. And that's actually a question I had. So is each project different, or can you create some sort of streamlined process to approach handling different, all of the different situations?
Yeah, I've definitely created a structure for myself when I'm working on a production, in terms of like what the charts look like, what I need to track, and creating documents. And I just apply that structure to everything I'm working on. I think I would be lost without it, frankly. But it's fun because it's like you've got this structure to work in, but then every project is different, whether it's like a Western or a contemporary television show, or you get to work with all these fun different elements.
Mm, hmm. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about How do you structure the work you do in terms of your price point? Do you do like a commissions base? Is it a certain fee to be represented? How did you go about figuring all of that out, and what's standard for the industry?
Yeah, so when I'm consulting or I'm working on a project that's hourly or project-based fee, um, just based on what what their budget is basically. But in terms of representing artists, I'm 100% commission based. The artist is not paying me to pitch them whatsoever. And honestly, I think it would be unethical to do so, to charge a
Okay.
musician to pitch them. I'm aware of the companies that do charge for placement, and I've never worked with them on the production side. And I've never worked with someone else on the production side who's been in charge of it and I've been helping them. Like, I've never seen anyone work with those companies before. So I think it would be a disservice to you as an artist, both in terms of like you're paying them money, you're losing money to get placed, and the company you're working with is probably not even getting you much attention in the first place.
Mm. Yeah. So is there a busy season and a quiet season that you have in your work or anything like that?
There used to be before streaming, there was pilot season and pitching season in terms of television. Film usually comes out around full year. There's not a lot of releases in January though. But ever since streaming came out, there are TV shows being made year round for, all productions. I will say that the industry largely shuts down for the last 2 weeks of the year. So around the holidays,
Mm.
everybody's usually gone. So I hope you
Hmm.
got everything you need before then. But
Yeah.
other than that, it's pretty much all year long.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's a nice little break structured in there for everybody, right?
Yeah.
So, is there any industry experts that you follow or learn from that you think would be helpful as a resource to other people?
Yeah, I mean, if you have a favorite TV show where you like the music or like you watched a movie and you thought the songs were really great, look up whoever has the title of music supervisor and then just follow their social accounts. Some of them like
Mm.
to participate on LinkedIn, some are, Twitter people, but just find them, start following them, start looking at what they're talking about in terms of specific people. But also, if you want to learn more about the industry, there's the Guild of Music Supervisors, which I'm a member of, which has it's a membership where they're doing continuing education, but they also do that was the annual conference I went to. So if you're a newbie, like start paying attention to what they're posting. I'm also a member of the California Copyright Conference, which is a little more legal and copyright oriented, but it's going to
Mm.
help you get down to the nitty gritty. And they have monthly webinars that are open to the public for like a $5 fee or something. Um, and then there's also a number of blogs, if you just start searching them, that are geared towards music licensing, and they're posting interesting articles. So if you're interested in learning more, those are resources I would start looking at.
Yeah, absolutely. Those sound great. Lots of good tips there. So tell
Yeah.
me, how can people find you?
I'm on social media at Maddi Frick on most of my accounts. And then my company for musicians where I represent them is called June July. So my website's junejulymp3.com, or just look it up on social media. And I do have a contact form on my website. So if you're a musician who would like to send me songs of yours for me to listen to, you can use the contact form on my website to send me a link to stream your song.
Nice. Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you for that. And we're gonna transition to the gawk portion of this episode now. And you had told me that you have some pretty interesting celebrity experiences. So I want to hear all about this. Tell me what's up.
Yeah, so I when I worked at Universal Pictures, I was on the studio lot, is what they call it, which is the
Okay.
large property where they produce lots of stuff.
Mm. Hmm.
It's the property is also contains the theme park. So if you've been to Universal Studios Hollywood, the
Oh,
other
okay.
half of the property is where we actually make the TV shows and movies. And
Mm.
so at lunchtime, I would, go for a walk around the property. I had a little loop, but the loop included like the back behind the Voice TV show stage. I would
Oh,
like
I didn't
walk
even know
back
that was
behind.
there. Okay.
Yeah, they film it there.
Okay.
And so I would walk back behind there as part of my little walking loop. And so I got to see most of the hosts of the show. Like one time they were filming promos back there and they were playing ping pong. It was like Blake and the other one of the country singers, the other one was there playing ping pong together. I'm like, this is kind of weird.
I am the worst
But
celebrity name person, so don't ask me.
yeah, I know. Ooh, I'm really bad with names, which is not great. But and so I was walking back there, and they do have like six parking spots, and that those are reserved for the celebrity hosts. And this big SUV comes over, and it turns its blinker on. It just sits there because I'm like clearly in its way, and like it just felt like time slowed down a little bit. And I'm like, I'm walking, but I'm like trying not to like run and be weird or anything. And I look over, and the driver of the giant SUV was Miley Cyrus herself with like a little like towel on her head, like she just came out of the shower. So I blocked her that morning. But she drives herself to work, which is pretty cool.
Well, I feel like Americans are pretty good at doing things themselves, but yeah, that's really interesting that you get that little sneak peek. And also side comment to that, I was like, wow, what an effective use of land space to have two different cash flowing properties in the same location.
Yeah,
But
really. Well, and then they have their studio tour at the theme park, and you get in a little tram, and then they actually drive you through where we actually make the movies.
oh,
And
okay.
like I would have to go like pick up checks, and they have these like bungalows on the far side of the property. It was so far that you had to like get a golf cart and drive it all the way, and you'd have to like sit at the stop sign and wait for like the tram to go by, and like all the people like looking around for a celebrity, and I'm like, I'm not a celebrity. I'm just trying to go pick up some checks. I'm sorry.
You can take a picture of me though if you want.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Well, thank you so much for sharing and being with me today, Maddie.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and if you enjoyed listening to Maddie or you're interested in that aspect of being represented as a musician, etc., you can reach out to her at junejulymp3.com. And I will see you next time.